Springs regular city council meeting of March 14th, 2024 to order. Can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
All members are present, Mr. Mayor.
We don't have any presentations, but I wanted to, at the beginning of the meeting, just make a comment about the Navigation Center. And I know we'll have comments later that opened this week. That has been a long time coming. It was really a terrific event. It was packed house. We now have 50 overnight beds at the early entry facility. It is not a drop-in facility. People must go through the Access Center, which is the boxing club on El Cielo, and are transported at 4 p.m. each day to the early entry facility and back to the Access Center each morning, and given meals at night and in the morning. Once somebody has signed up, they do have a guaranteed bed as long as they show up at 4 p.m. And then we also had a glimpse of the modular units that should open up in August, which will be 80 mini apartments with their own kitchenette and bathroom and bed, with an area for pets and children to play in, and with full wraparound services as well. So it was quite a huge endeavor. We're very unfortunate from our city, state, and federal and county partnership. We put in just a portion of the money, but most of the money came from the state and county, as well as we also just got a couple million approved from the federal government. And I wanted to especially thank the Scott Stiles, our city manager, who worked so hard, Flynn Fagg, Jay Verada, Joel Montalvo, and all the rest of the city staff who really worked so hard to make this happen. So before we go on, can we do the pledge again, please? Okay. She did show up, so I'm going to go say hello. Please excuse me for 1 second. Okay, sorry for that. So we have one of our local residents, Dr. Terry Kedover, is working with our police chief, Andy Mills, who's brought the international program, Do the Right Thing, to the Palm Springs area. The program recognizes each month youth in our community who set an example. Students recognized in this program are the ones leading the Pledge of Allegiance at our city council meetings. This week we have Kyla McAfee, an 8th grader from Raymond Cree Middle School. She is a leader in the school's Plus team, Peer Leaders Uniting Students, where she leads student forums which focus on empathy and acceptance. In overcoming her own obstacles, Kyla has been a role model for other students at Raymond Cree. Kyla, would you like to go to the microphone and lead us in the pledge?
Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Kyla. Okay. Our next item is acceptance of the agenda. The City Council will discuss the order of the agenda, may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, or request consent calendar items to be removed for a separate discussion. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Are there any items staff or a council member would like to be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and/or vote? Councilmember Garner.
I just have a comment on 1H when it's time.
Anyone else? Okay.
No.
What? Councilmember DeHart?
Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse myself on item 1D. An organization I represent is listed as receiving a check.
Okay. At this time, I invite the city attorney, Jeff Ballinger, to provide a report on the closed session.
I can do that. The city council met in closed session to discuss the two litigation items that are listed on the agenda. There was no reportable action, and the city clerk reminds me it'd be appropriate to take a motion on the
Yes.
order of the agenda.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Ready? Nope. We do a roll call vote.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse on item 1O, the second reading, adoption of an ordinance for cannabis, please.
Okay.
Councilmember Middleton. Councilmember Holsich.
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart.
Yes?
Mayor Bernstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And Mayor, if I might, I'd like to point out when the council gets to it on item 1O, the second reading of the cannabis ordinance, there was a typo. The council decided at the last meeting on introduction to have a cap of 3 cannabis businesses. The ordinance says 2, so it should be 3.
Okay. The next item is public testimony. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the city council on non-public hearing agenda items only. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. You are asked to please begin your time by telling us what agenda item or items you are speaking about. Please note that testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the public hearing, and general public comment for subjects not on the agenda will be taken later in the evening. If there's a written comment that you wish to distribute to the city council members, please hand it to the clerk. Do we have any speakers?
No speakers.
Okay, we had 2 if those were, these items were not pulled. Okay, the next item is the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar with Mayor Pro Tem Ron DeHart recusing on 1D and Councilmember Holstage recusing on 1O. And there's nothing else removed. Okay, and the correction that the city attorney mentioned. We have a motion and a second. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart.
Yes.
Councilmember Holsich. Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Middleton. Mayor Bernstein.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item is 2A, and I'm going to recuse myself from this as the location is within 500 feet of a retail business and in an abundance of that I own. And so an abundance of caution, I will recuse myself. Oh, I'm sorry, a comment on 1H. I apologize.
No worry, just before you leave, so you can hear it too. I wanted to just bring the public's attention and council to 1H, which is acceptance of the Arnico Phase 4 sewer improvements. So in 2019, when I was campaigning, myself and other candidates heard that off of Gianotri and Via Escuela, that there was this little portion of District 1, which is now District 2, that was not fully connected to the sewer. Upon talking to city staff at the time, we found out that part of the project had actually already been complete, and they just hadn't moved forward to the final phases to go from septic to sewer in not very many homes in this little tiny area of town. So we went forward. One of the first things in 2020 that I got to do was move forward this sewer project, and we've been slowly moving forward and into each phase for the last 5 years. And we are now today saying that it is finally complete. And it's really exciting, and I just want to mention for the public that these projects take a long time, but when you do let us know that there's a problem, we act on it. and we make sure that things are resolved. And it might not be as quickly as any of us would like, but it does get done. So this is a really big win for a community that is also a low-income community, and this is something that nobody thought anybody cared about, but we do care. And we pushed it through, and it was Measure J. It was also a Measure J funded project. So this is our 1 cent sales tax going to improving the quality of life for our everyday residents, many of whom who are working in these places selling these goods to our tourists. So it's a very feel-good moment, I think, for us as council members, for us as city staff. Big thank you to Joel Montalvo for getting this project done. And thank you all to supporting that we finished it.
Congratulations, yes. Okay, so I am going to now recuse myself from item 2A. Again, the condo units are within 500 feet of a retail business I own, and in abundance of caution, I do not think I should weigh in.
All right, the next item is item 2A. It is a request by DTPS B-3 LLC for a development agreement related to an approved mixed-use development involving 45 residential condominium units and retail on Block B of the downtown Palm Springs specific plan at the northeast corner of Bellardo Road and Museum Way, 200 North Bellardo Road, Zone CBD, Case DA 2023-0008. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. So the request before you is a public hearing to enter into a development agreement with the developer of the Block B project downtown within the Downtown Palm Springs specific plan. The project in question within the development agreement is related. It had two components to it. It was a major architectural approval that was granted in 2021, as well as a tentative track map. The architectural approval is for the construction of the 73,000 square foot mixed-use building. It involves 45 condominium residential units, as well as some ground floor retail. The tentative track map was to create air condominium map, or air condominiums. And so that's essentially what the development agreement involves. As I mentioned, this was approved in 2021 by the City Council, and the AAC, the Architectural Advisory Committee, approved an activation plan in response to a condition of approval from Council. So let me just show you exactly what was approved back in 2021. This on the screen here is a site perspective of the proposed building that is going on Block B. This would be if you were looking from the northwest vantage point away from the site, looking to the southeast. It is a 6-story building, as I mentioned, 73,000 total square feet with 45 mostly condominium units within this building. Another view of the proposed building from the southerly vantage point, looking to the north, down the existing Paseo, where Clandestino is currently has outdoor seating. And so this is the view to the north and northwest. The Architectural Committee did review a ground floor activation plan as required by the City Council, and so that is what is shown on this screen, showing different components of how the applicant was intending to activate the ground floor around this building with various techniques such as lighting, vendors, and art. So the applicant has submitted the development agreement that's before you this evening to extend the entitlements in response to essentially a legal dispute that has been ongoing for a few years now that was filed with the Department of Industrial Relations, and that has essentially delayed the developer's ability to finalize the project costs and pull permits to exercise the approvals for the project. So typically a project is valid for 2 years. They can get up to 2 additional years of extensions if approved by the Planning Commission. The applicant did get a 1-year extension last year, and so they could request 1 more year to get the total of 4 that's permitted by the code. But based on discussions with the applicant, it may take longer than what is permitted by the code in terms of the maximum allowed. So that is why the development agreement has been submitted, and the entitlements, if approved, would be extended through July of 2030. And that's about 5 years more than what our code typically allows. In terms of context, other development agreements that the city has had in the past, they've been as high as 20 years. It's common to see them 10 years, so staff thought the request for 5 years was a reasonable request. I'd also say that the applicant is actually mostly complete with the tentative track map and has essentially exercised that entitlement because they've gotten approval of the final map. That occurred at your last meeting on February 29th. And they are nearly complete with the building permit that would be required to exercise the major architectural application. In terms of the development agreement itself, the content is, it has recitals explaining some of the background of the agreement and contains 13 total articles. Some of the items I've drawn attention to here are Section 3.01. The effective date of the agreement would be upon approval if this item is approved. The term of the agreement in Section 3.02 would be through July of 2030. The public benefit identified in the agreement lists items that are being provided by the developer, essentially tying it to many of the improvements that have been done as a part of the downtown redevelopment project, as well as some other economic factors. And then 7.10, the annual review. In our zoning code, we have to do an annual review of a development agreement to ensure that the agreement, that there is compliance with the agreement. The Planning Commission reviewed this application on February 28th and voted unanimously to recommend approval to the City Council. They made the required findings in their motion. They also recommended revisions to 2 sections of the agreement, Section 4.03 in terms of the public benefit, really expanding on the public benefit being tied to much of the improvements that have been done as a part of the downtown project. Improved streets and sidewalks and a public park. And Section 7.09 in terms of the timing of the construction and completion of the project. When we asked the applicant to add the time frame for which the project would be completed after they pulled the building permits, they said that 24 months should be sufficient to get a certificate of occupancy. So that was identified in Section 7.10. The commission requested that that also be identified in Section 7.09. And so those changes are part of the draft agreement that was attached to your staff report. And so the recommendation this evening is to accept the commission's approval recommendation, noting that the agreement is consistent with the findings in Section 94.08 of our zoning code. There's no further environmental review required under Section 15162 of the CEQA guidelines, and that we introduce the ordinance for first reading approving this agreement. One other item I wanted to touch on briefly related to a public comment that we received yesterday regarding this proposal. It was a letter submitted by an attorney identifying that further environmental review is required. In response to that, and this is directly related to the closure of Museum Way, staff doesn't agree with that conclusion for a few reasons. First, the agreement is not establishing any new development that has not been previously analyzed. Rather, it is only extending the existing entitlements. Second, Museum Way closure is temporary at this time. The council has not acted on that vacation of the roadway segment in question, and once the application for vacation is presented to the City Council, it will include the necessary CEQA analysis. And so only if the council approves the right-of-way vacation application for the Museum Way segment will the closure be considered permanent. Third, the project does not require direct access from the roadway segment that is closed temporarily. Currently, there is vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle access provided along each side of the property in accordance with the downtown's specific plan. Vehicular access to the underground garage remains available from the existing garage. And then lastly, the statute of limitations applies to this request. The project entitlements received a one-year extension on January 25th, 2023, when the temporary closure of the roadway had existed. The city received no comments on the temporary closure at that time, indicating that further CEQA analysis was required or necessary. And so for those reasons, staff believes that further environmental review is not required as identified in our staff report. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions of the council.
Thank you for that, David. Did you introduce yourself and your title when you started?
Sorry, David Newell, Assistant Planning Director.
Excellent. Good job. Good presentation. Are there any questions for staff? Council? No questions? At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. The public is invited to speak on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes. City Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We have one speaker, Vincent Whitaker. Okay. He wishes not to speak. We have no more commenters.
I love it. The public hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion or additional questions from the council? Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to disclose for the record, because this is a public hearing item, I spoke to the applicant. I asked about the status of the site, the current use, and what the plan would be if the full 5 years or the full term of this was needed. And so it sounded like he spoke to staff and agreed to submit 3 options for the site use for beautification to staff within 18 months, pending the DIR action if the site is still vacant at that time. So I would just ask staff, if council is okay with that, to include that in any approval tonight. I see confused faces. That's the site of the graffiti park, and so there have been some concerns, the downtown use and just making sure it remains beautiful over time. And so I think that there's beautification we might want to pursue with the applicant if this extends, which we hope it will not, the full term of the agreement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, so do we have a motion on the floor to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation with the additional condition that if no development is commenced within 18 months, then the developer will come back with the beautification plan for Block B to City Council?
So moved.
Second.
Can we hit the button? No.
No, it's not working.
City Clerk, we do go call for roll, please.
Councilmember Middleton. Councilmember Holstage.
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, and at any second, we should be seeing the mayor run through those doors and resume his seat so I can take the rest of the night off.
You can keep going till it's gone, right?
Go ahead and we can go into the report. All right, the next item in the agenda is item 3A, which is the fiscal year 2022-2023 financial audit reports of the city of Palm Springs. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the council.
Share with us who you are.
I am Chris Mooney. I'm the Director of Finance and Treasurer.
Beautiful.
Tonight, we have a presenter. Francis Kua will be presenting the audit reports to the council officially. The audits reports in your staff report were finished on December 31st of last year. And while I believe Francis was going to show her screen, if we could pull her into the picture, that'd be great. Whilst we're getting ready with her, just a couple of items. There's 2 reports that are going to be submitted at a later date. One is called the single audit. That is an audit of federal grants, and that is currently underway and will be presented when it's finished. It's supposed to be finished by March 31st. And then lastly will be the Measure J audit. The Measure J audit will go before the Measure J Commission next Thursday, and once they see it, we'll bring it back before the City Council. Those two will be coming at a later date. A little bit about Francis. Francis is with the Poon Group. That's the city's auditors. They've been with the city for about 4 years. Francis is the partner on the city's audit. She oversees it. She has a great staff. We work very well with the Poon Group, and we're very happy that they're our auditors. And with that, I will turn it over to Francis.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and the member of City Council. My name is Francis Kuo. I'm very happy to be here to present the audit. Just want to make sure that you can see my screen, and let me know if you have a...
Hey, Francis, can you hold on just 1 second? We can't hear you very well. So if the team in the back can maybe switch that volume up a little bit or turn it on, that'd be great. We'll give them
Is
just
it
a
a
minute.
little better now? Or
Not,
still
not
not
yet.
very clear?
Just give them a few more seconds, please. Okay, Francis, I think we're good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so can you hear me better now?
Nope.
Hello?
Sorry, Francis, not yet. But we're going to keep trying here.
Yeah, IT. IT, we need some volume.
We can hear it coming out of our screens, but not.
The audience can't hear it. Try it again. We can call on the cell phone if you'd like me to put her to the mic on the cell phone.
I don't have it.
But she won't be able to. We won't be
Is
able,
it-
we won't be able to, for her to,
Wait.
try it now.
Try it out, Francis.
Is it better now?
Yes, that's
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, thank you for that,
Okay.
Francis. Please go ahead.
All right, let me start this one more time.
Okay.
So can you see the presentation as well in front of you?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, so tonight what I will go through is to go through the scope of work since there are so many reports that's being issued, and to go through the required communication in accordance with the professional standard and talk about the audit results. So for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, we completed the audit for the city's financial statement. We also completed audit for the Public Financing Authority financial statement, Passenger Facility Charge Program compliance audit, the Housing Successor compliance audit, Measure J compliance audit, and also the agreed upon procedures on Measure D and also on the appropriation limit schedules. Some of the required communications in accordance with professional standards. So our responsibility is in accordance with the professional standard is to form and express opinion about the financial statement. So those financial statements are prepared by management with your oversight that they are fairly presented in all material respect. So what we do with the audit, we plan to perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance. So reasonable assurance does not mean absolute assurance. So we also during that process, we consider the internal control over financial reporting. So during our audit, it's a very lengthy process. So during the interim field work, we look into the internal control over financial reporting, looking into different transaction cycle, including the financial reporting, and then including revenue collection, cash receipts, payroll expenditure, those significant transaction classes, and evaluate the internal control over financial reporting. So these considerations are used to determine our audit procedures, but not to provide assurance on the internal control. And we also conclude whether there are any condition or event that could raise substantial doubt about the city's ability to continue as a going concern. And of course, we are here to communicate with those charged with governance. So we have also complied with all the relevant ethical requirements regarding independence. So what that means is independence, not just in fact and in appearance, but also evaluate any non-audit services that were provided to the city. Some of the significant accounting policy that we wanted to communicate. On the note 1 to the financial statement, the city disclosed all the significant accounting policy. And during the year ended June 30th, 2023, the city implemented GASB Statement Number 96, which is a subscription-based information technology arrangement, and a couple other significant estimates that's used by management to prepare the financial statement. Number 1 is investment fair value. Number 2 is the depreciation and amortization on capital asset, mainly related to the useful life of those capital assets that the city owns. And the most significant estimate definitely related to the net pension liability and net OPEB liabilities. So those two liabilities involve actuarial assumption and actuarial method that are subject to an estimate. So those are the significant accounting estimate that's used by management to prepare the financial statements. Couple of sensitive disclosures that's in the financial statement. Of course, note 1 is the summary of significant accounting policy. Note 9 involves the city's claim and judgments related to the general liabilities and the workers' compensation liabilities. Note 10 and 11 related to the defined benefit pension plan and other post-employment benefits. And we are also happy to report there are no uncorrected misstatements reported in the city's financial statement. So a couple other required communication. Sometimes the management might have consultation with other accountants related to any auditing or accounting matter. So to our knowledge, there's no such a consultation with other accountants. And we experienced no significant difficulty dealing with management during the course of the audit. And also we did not report any disagreement with management in terms of accounting treatment or auditing procedure performed. So with that, I'll go through the audit results. So for the fiscal year 23 audit, we issue a modified opinion for the financial statement audit. So what that means is the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respect. So the significant accounting policy that I described earlier, they are consistently applied for the financial statement. And the estimates are reasonable and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statement. And as I mentioned earlier, there are also a few compliance audits that we completed. So we also issue a modified opinions. So what that means, the city has complied with the compliance requirement in all material respect. So with that, conclude my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any question you may have.
Okay. Is there any discussion or additional questions from council? No? Anyone?
Chris, how many years has Pun Group conducted our audit?
This is the 4th year in a row.
Okay, and we have other years on the contract with
We
them?
have an extension of 1 more year before we put the services out to bid.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I don't have any either. Is there a motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart.
Yes.
Councilmember Middleton. Aye. Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Holstich.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Voted. That's okay. The next item on the agenda is item 3B, which is the general fund, capital, and airport mid-year fiscal year 23-24 budget update. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, Chris Mooney, Director of Finance and Treasurer, and if Francis is still on, thank you, Francis. We're going to go over the mid-year financial performance for fiscal year 23-24. Turn to the first slide. So sort of the overall couple of points before we begin into some of the detail. 2024, we're hearing from our asset management firm, Chandler, and some economic webinars that we've been in, that this is kind of a reset year, that coming out of COVID, we had a lot of increase in personal savings over the last couple of years that's been spent down, and that the results coming out of the fiscal year 24, I think maybe that's going to be a baseline year. So With that, we're kind of seeing some of that. We'll go through the detail. We'll start with the revenue section for the general fund, and just as a point of format, we'll go over the general fund, expenses and revenue, short capital presentation, and then the airport and budget revenue and expense for them as well. We'll start with the general fund, and hopefully we can see those numbers. We're trying. I'm not sure if we have any success or not, but we're trying. So we'll start with the first line in transit occupancy tax, or TOT. We're going to focus on the last green column where it says 2024 total forecasted in comparing to the 2024 revised budget. We are forecasting a total of $191.1 million in total revenue on a budget of 194.9. The first line item there is TOT. You can see that we are forecasting to come in over budget, so about $50.8 million on a $49.8 million budget. That's a little bit less than what we had the last couple of years. This is one of those line items that we think is leveling off a little bit. That's coming back maybe to a more normal figure. But historically, these numbers are still very strong. Pre-COVID, TOT was about $35 million. The last 3 years, we have eclipsed 50 million. Matter of fact, we went to 53 for the last 2 years. If we eclipse the $50 million year on a regular basis, that's a very strong year historically for the city, and means a very successful year. Under property taxes, in line number 2, we are forecasting $32.8 million in property tax revenue. The city levied $33 million, so we're right in line with what was levied. We think we're going to collect the majority of that, so we think we have a pretty solid number in $33 million for the property taxes. Under sales and use tax, this is another line that potentially could be leveling off. We're seeing it down from the prior couple of years. Prior couple of years were very strong. In 22, we had almost 32 million. In 23, last year, we had over 33 million. And historically, pre-COVID numbers were around 25, 26 million. So again, if we eclipse the $31 million mark on sales tax, then that's going to be a very strong and very successful year historically. Utility users tax is next, fourth line down. We're forecasting $15 million, which is about flat to last year on a budget of about just under 21 million. The budget, we worked with our tax consultants, Avenue Insights, to prepare the budget last year about this time. The numbers seem to be trending that way, but they've fallen off quite a bit. And we are looking at the numbers with Avenue Insights as to see why we had such a huge increase in our SoCal Edison UUT revenue. They went from about 4 million to about 12 million in 1 year. And talked to them today, and they just really need to get in there and do an audit of SCE for us on our taxes before they can really understand how we had that huge increase and why we're now seeing a decline. When that information is presented, we'll be sure to get that to council. That's it for the revenue for the general fund. Overall strong year, overall strong revenues again. We're very happy with where we're headed, even though we have a couple of items leveling off. If this is truly a baseline year, the city is going to be pretty healthy for the next few years. The next slide is our 3 major categories: TOT, property tax, and sales tax. The blue line is TOT, the gray line is property tax, and the orange line is sales tax. And this is just to show a 10-year history of some pretty slow, steady growth over the first few years. We got hit with COVID in FY20, and then steady, good growth, real good growth in TOT. And this is kind of show you where we're kind of leveling off a little bit these last couple of years. We'll see if that trend continues. We'll go over to the expenses. Again, focusing on the last green column, 2024 total forecasted versus 2024 revised budget. We're looking at total expenses of about $220.6 million on a budget of $225 million. And a couple of points here, we're seeing, we have had a lot of positions approved in last year's budget, both on the general fund, both on the airport. And you're going to see a similar message between the two in that we're still filling those positions. So we've got some vacancy savings that we've got into the budget right now. It's around $4 million in the general fund, and you'll see that really across a lot of the departments. A couple of other expenses that we want to highlight, and that $16.5 million in grant expenses, largely due to the state home key and HHAP grants that we're using for the navigation center. Next, the set-aside spend. So if you look at the second row from the bottom where it says set-asides remaining and look at the $10.2 million, that's the remaining set-asides that haven't been spent to date. And what's left of those set-asides, some affordable housing, some climate programs, and homelessness. Most of that $10.2 million is committed to projects. So we're getting to where we're spending through these set-asides and being very successful doing so. And then lastly, within the forecast of $220 million and within the budget, as you'll remember, council approved about $7 million to go toward a fund balance to go toward the construction of the Plaza Theater. Just wanted to point it out that we have put that in our forecast and we have put it in our budget. And that will take care of the general fund. We'll move on and do the short presentation for capital. Oh, I'm sorry, I wanted to back up and hit one thing first. The affordable housing set aside. We're setting aside $3 million for affordable housing. This is the TOT, portion of TOT that's going to affordable housing that the council approved last year. Currently, we have $3.2 million from last year's results into this affordable housing reserve. We are estimating another $3 million, and if that holds true, that affordable housing reserve will end this fiscal year about $6.2 million. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, Council.
Chris, before we go on, let's go back to the sales tax numbers. Now, these are through December 31.
They are, the forecast is through December 31, and then, yeah.
And what are you seeing so far in January and February? And I know those will be preliminary numbers, but we're certainly hearing of a softening as we have anecdotal conversations with our local retailers. And
I will say we did see some of that softening in December. So when we received our cash in February and we saw the December sales results, we did see that we were down. Again, I'm asking our sales tax consultants to help us with this. Our top two industries in sales tax are our restaurant business, and number two is the auto industry. And both of those were down in not only first 6 months of the year, but in December. And so for forecasting wise, you know, total through December, we had $14 million total for the first 6 months of the year in sales tax. We know we're going to get better than that in these next 6 months because of the volume that happens this time of year. If we get that volume as expected, I still see that we're pretty confident in eclipsing that $30 million number.
obviously, it's a time to be cautious as we start to move forward. And I think all of us would appreciate not long presentations, but monthly updates as to where these sales tax, property tax, TOT are heading.
Sure.
Chris, if I could just clarify, because in the written staff report, you have cash received through January, meaning sales through November.
Yeah, that's in the year-to-date numbers. In our forecasted numbers, we did update that to include December.
Okay.
We just didn't update the year-to-date in staff report.
But these are December sales received at the end of February.
That's correct. Okay. Yeah. So I'll just address the general fund now since we had questions. So the cautiously optimistic statement holds very, very true. I've talked with city manager Scott, and we have sort of passed that on that because we're still very early in our year right now. We don't know what those January numbers are. We don't know what those February numbers are. Our strongest months are March and April. We won't know those till June. So we are cautiously optimistic. We're hopeful, and we tried to build a little bit of conservatism into the forecast if you consider last year. So cautiously optimistic and cautiously optimistic on the expense side of the P&L as well. We're going to watch that very closely. Try not to introduce any new spend unless it's critical. Watch our head count very closely, and just have some conservatism on that side of the budget as well as on the revenue side of the budget.
I can just add a comment as long as we're on the sales tax, is that in some of the hospitality meetings, and obviously it does not include car sales, the report is that January has been down, February was strong for restaurants, for brick and mortar retail. Both were sort of flat or down a little bit from last year.
Okay, good. Good to hear. That I'll go ahead and move on to the capital page.
Member Holstich.
Sorry, just while we're on general fund, if I can. So for the public, we chatted ahead of time about the affordable housing set aside as well as the other set aside. So can you just give some detail to that for the public, as well as, how much is earmarked, it says in the staff report, but how much will be spent? For the council, my question is, now that we have an affordable housing fund with a revenue source from the TOT from vacation rentals, should or can we move our existing housing dollars into that fund so they'll be protected from general government use, in case, pros and cons to that in case of lost revenue or something like that? So could you just detail what the set-asides are for, how much will be spent over the next year, and then if you can answer that question, if we should move those or just let them stay in the general fund as a general set-aside?
Sure. On the set-asides, we have, of the original approval of the $10 million a couple years ago, we have about $5.7 million left in affordable housing. And I know in talking with Community Development Director Jay Verada that we have committed to a couple of different housing projects right now where we think money is going to go out the door before the end of the fiscal year. And then I know they're working on a few more, which would mean we would dip into that reserve as well as spend our entire set-aside money. So we do have committed projects that Jay is looking at and Scott is looking at, and so that money should go out the door hopefully by the end of this fiscal year.
If it doesn't go out the door this fiscal year, is it possible to move it to the housing fund so it doesn't just sit in general set aside?
Yeah, I think so. I'll have to have discussion with the auditors on that to be sure that's allowable, because there is a specific definition behind the TOT to affordable housing. I obviously don't have a problem with it if council wants to choose to do that. I just need to make sure they're okay with it. And I'll let Jay comment on a couple of things.
Jay Verada, Director of Housing and Community Development. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I must have missed some of the comments en route here, so if the question was thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody, any more questions on the general fund while we're talking about it?
Oh, well, as long as we're talking about general fund, then yes. So the transit occupancy tax, we are down $500,000 for the first half of the year.
Yep.
But you're predicting that we're going to go over budget with the second half of the year?
I'm hopeful that we'll go over budget. Again, cautiously optimistic. When we built the budget, we did put some conservatism in that number because we did end up with $53 million of TOT last year and 54 the year before. So when we built that $49.8 million into the budget, we thought we were being a little conservative. We are down this year. We're down about 3.5% total. Hotels are still strong at 2%. We're seeing a little bit of weakness in the vacation rental market. But if we continue that 3.5% down, even up to 4%, it's going to meet that $50.8 million number.
Okay. And again, we were at the hospitality, people were optimistic. January, I think we have the TOT numbers and we're a bit down, and there's some concern about April. But I agree with Councilmember Middleton as to cautious optimism.
Yeah, that number gets a lot of attention this time of year, so we are paying very close attention to it, as well as the sales tax numbers too.
Yeah, and it was interesting from the graph that you showed is that there was a more drop in TOT from 22 to 24, a steeper drop than for sales tax, sales and use tax, which is sort of almost level in that. So that may have just been a function of higher prices. I think sales and use tax is driven by volume more than just
That's correct.
of people. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move on to capital. We have a short capital presentation here. Just want to show, as I have in the past, these are the funding sources for a lot of the 5-year CIP, a lot of the capital that the city funds. You have the Measure J fund, of course, which is the 1% sales tax. The capital fund, within the capital fund, it's a very generic title, but that's where a lot of our major road and bridge projects are funded from. So a lot of that revenue you see under capital is going to be from Caltrans, a little bit from CVAG. Have Measure A, the 0.5% sales tax. In that fund is also some CVAG revenue. You have the RMRA, it's a gas tax, and then you have another gas tax. The RMRA is the latest gas tax that was approved, and the regular gas tax fund is an older gas tax. Quimby Fund, which is the Parks and Rec restricted for, and then you have the Drainage Fund, which is an impact fee on development of vacant land to help with stormwater runoff. So those are the funds that typically fund the capital. Below that, we have, I do want to also mention under the capital fund, the $3 million that the council set aside for the parks is built into that capital fund. Those funds are also committed largely to playground equipment at the area parks, and that money is worked on to being spent, and we think some of that's going to go out the door by the end of the year, hopefully. There's the rest of the projects that are top on the city engineers list. Won't go through all of them, but the Indian Union Can widening, a big bridge project, the Plaza Theater improvements, and just to note on the Plaza Theater, a lot of that funding is not from the city. A lot of that, while the city may have fronted some money, the Plaza Theater Foundation is continuing to fundraise, and they are going to fund a lot of that construction. One other note I want to bring about is the annual paving rehabilitation that is funded by the Measure J Fund. Historically, it has been $6 million. It was increased to $9 million this year. That contract was approved by council last year, and the construction should begin almost immediately on the paving rehabilitation project. And with that, I'll open it up to questions on capital.
Questions or comments? Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you. And so just for the public, I know we have a lot of people looking at Parks and Rec projects very carefully, and we're getting those questions a lot. So can you explain how those are set aside and protected from other uses in the future?
Yeah, so it was a council direction to set aside that $3 million. And so it would take a council direction to remove it from the parks.
Thank you. And the $9 million, congratulations to Councilmember Middleton for advocating for that. I mean, for roads, I apologize. That's a 1-year investment, right? There's no agreement that it's $9 million a year from here on out.
That's correct. It was just, we had a carryover of $3 million. And so we added that to this year. I think if you ask the city engineer, he would like to keep that, but we'll just see if the funding's there.
Thank you. I think we are interested in what's the correct amount of investment to get ahead of the curve for the cost of road repairs. We just want to also spread that evenly throughout other projects in the city. Thank you.
Well, then I have some comments. I do want to point out just Measure J is almost half of our capital funds. And so I know 9 million is a lot. That is more than we predicted Measure J would be annually in the beginning. So it's quite impressive that we did that. I want to mention something else on the parks to Councilmember Holstage. Under the expenses, going back, I'm sorry, to the general fund, I apologize for doing this, but that was one that we were significantly under forecast on for expenses. And can you explain what, besides capital, what that is going for and why we are not spending what we...
That's largely vacancy savings. So there's some positions that are open in Parks and Rec. I know they were approved for quite a few positions as well. They're continuing to fill those. Largely, that difference is going to be vacancy savings.
Okay. but they are going to continue to, they are going to be filled.
Yes,
Because a
yeah.
lot of the concerns I know we're having in the Parks meeting has to do with staffing, maintenance, and things that are just take people power to do.
They're actively being filled, and the hope is that they'll be filled quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will move on then to the airport. So similar format to the general fund, we're going to concentrate on the full year forecast. We're going to look at that last green column there, and forecasted revenue for the airport's $82.3 million on a budget of 149.4. That doesn't look very good, but I'll explain what that is in just a minute. A lot of our, as you'll see on the next graph, our passenger traffic is still very strong. Everyone knows of the record year last year. We're looking to exceed that record year this year and continue with strong passenger fees. As you see in the fifth line down under passenger charges, we're looking at $6.4 million. We're going to meet budget. On the customer facility charges, the line up from that, that's about $9 million. We're going to exceed budget there. And then what happened in July, the airlines signed new airline use and lease agreements with the airport, and that's going to generate more revenue there. We've got a chart that shows that. More landing fee revenue, gate fee revenue, baggage claim revenue, all coming from the airports, as well as the funding of capital, a lot of major capital projects, which we'll show you in a minute. I want to go down to look at the third row from the bottom, the capital projected federal grants line, where we're looking at $2.5 million of revenue on a $56 million budget. Just want to point out that the airport budgets all their capital projects that are in those airline use and lease agreements and more, and these projects can last up to 3 to 5 years. They budget them all in year number one, and we carry over any unused dollars. And the reason why they do that is they want to keep that visible to the airlines and know that those projects are budgeted, so the airlines know what they're paying for. So that's the reason why that's budgeted like that. It's not uncommon to have capital budgeted like that, but I just want to make sure to clarify that that's what's going on, and you'll see it again on the expense side. Next slide. Again, we talked about passenger traffic. Record year last year at 3.2, so almost 3.3, and we're looking at about 3.4. So it's flattening out, and we know that the airport is really busting at the seams with capacity. So this is good that we're looking at growth. And if you've been in the airport recently, like I have, it's packed. So hopefully we're going to meet that number, and we're expecting to, and that's generating a lot of good operating revenue. So this is the operating revenue only. This is all the passenger fees and the airline charges that come in. We call that the operating revenue for the airport. You can see back in fiscal year 22, just under $43 million of operating revenue. Fiscal year 23, up to $52.3 million in operating revenue. And then we're forecasting large growth at $58.4 million. That's largely due to those newly signed agreements with the airlines.
What is included in that other airport charges line item? 13 million?
Yeah,
almost
so that'll be
14
the
million?
landing fees that the airlines pay. That'll be those gate fees I mentioned earlier. It's going to be the baggage claim fees that they pay. So most anything that are in those airline use and lease agreements that we sign, that the airlines pay us, that's what that's going to be.
Okay.
We'll move on to expenses, and then we'll get to some questions after this. So this is the expense line. Again, a large disparity between forecasted and budget. The airline, as I mentioned earlier, is experiencing the same thing that we are in the general fund. A lot of positions approved. We're hiring like crazy. We're getting them filled. They should be filled quickly. I think the airport's got about 20 more left to fill out of about 40 plus that was approved. So a good movement there, and they're still working to get those positions filled. And I'll just jump down to the other expenses, the second row from the bottom, and we have $16.9 million in forecasted expenses on $119,000. Again, that's the same thing that we're seeing up above in the revenue line. All those capital projects are budgeted there. Any unused dollars are going to be rolled over. And we want to take a look at the major capital projects that the airlines are doing, or the airport is doing, and the airlines are paying for the most part, and the status of all those projects. So you can see that we're moving on some, and we anticipate more progress as we get through the rest of this fiscal year and into our next fiscal year, making a lot of progress on a lot of these capital projects for the airport. So with that, I will open it up to airport questions.
Councilmember Halstage?
Thank you. There was some discussion of creating an art fund out of projects in the airport, just for art in the airport. Is that designated anywhere, or is that still under construction?
I'm going to bring on Victoria, the
Thank you.
airport administrator, because she can probably better answer that question.
Hi there. Good evening, Council. My name is Victoria Carpenter, the Airport Administration Manager at Palm Springs Airport. So we are going to be designating 1% of whatever the capital projects total cost towards arts.
So do we need to create an extra category for that? That it hasn't started yet? When does that begin?
That is something that hasn't started, but for future projects, we do intend to do. Yes.
So can we identify that on the city's budget so that we can, I'm a big fan of setting it aside and writing it out for the public, so public is aware when they're watching this that those funds might be available for projects. So how should we account for that in our?
We can show it separately as a part of a fund balance, sort of like we do our Calipers Reserve. It's not necessarily a council action, I don't believe, so we can't officially do it in like our fund balance schedules for the audit, but we can, in our reporting, internal reporting and reporting to the council, we can make sure that we set that aside so that it's visible.
That'd be great if council is amenable. Thank you.
Yes. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay, I have some. Can you go back to the revenue for a second and just repeat again? You mentioned the capital project federal grants being, because they're budgeting out. What is and is that the same, the charges for services that are 14 million under?
Yeah, so a couple of things there, and I might need Victoria to expand on this a little bit, but the 42 million, those charges for services are largely the airline fees that they pay us. That's probably a combination of a couple of things, maybe a little bit of aggressive budgeting on the food and beverage concessions. That line item on the food and beverage concessions, we're showing that's not growing as much as we may have thought or may have liked because of some of the construction that's going on at the airport with the restaurants. So we're seeing a little bit of a little bit of weakness. Anything else that?
Does that include food, beverage, and retail concessions?
Yes, it does. Mhm.
Okay, because they're all under construction.
Correct.
And they're under construction the whole spring, basically.
Yeah, right.
Is there a reason that wasn't done in the summer?
So, good evening again. So the reason why it wasn't done in the summer is because we've been experiencing some delays with just the schedule itself with both the retail and the food and beverage. A lot of it has to do with some permitting, as well as even the concessionaires trying to locate a contractor. I know that was a very big challenge for here in the Valley for them to get them in here. So the construction schedule ended up getting pushed. So we tried to have all of the stores open at different times throughout the year, just so that we could still be able to serve our passengers.
Do you have any sense of when all the new concession rehab will be finished? Is that in the fall?
Yes, by the end of this year, 2024, December.
End of the calendar year? Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Any other questions as a whole for the whole presentation?
Yeah, Councilmember Halstage, yeah.
Thank you. Similar question again. I think I've asked before in the last few years, but it's been a while, for Measure D to also be accounted for. It's a general tax, but we did make commitments to the community that it would be used for public safety. And so sometimes we get questions either from public safety groups that the city bargains with, or the public, where their tax dollars are going for, and talking to city staff in the past, the last few years, it's clear we spend much more than we receive in Measure D on public safety. So it's really just accounting, or like transparency and education for the public. But it does seem to me like possibly best practices to list out Measure D. When I had first gotten on city council, we didn't have a separate fund for Measure J, and then we had created that and done that kind of separation from the general fund. So do you have thoughts of that on that?
Yeah, you You were right in what you said. The Measure J fund or D fund wouldn't cover, it's plenty covered. It supports the public safety, theoretically, or in spirit of the Measure D. But if we could do some more insight into that, we probably should track it separately. And I'll take a look and see what it would create to create another fund. We don't really like to do that, but it's commingled with the general fund right now. But we can take a look at maybe some more clear reporting on what Measure D is doing.
I think that'd be great, just reporting for the public. I'm not an accountant. I'm not, going to tell you what we should create a separate fund for, but I do think that accounting, especially as we go to the public and we ask them to extend some of these measures or more, it's great to have that public education and transparency.
I completely agree.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions or comments? I have some more, I'm sorry. I do want to get better feel of the utility, because that's, to hire a consultant and then be $6 million off is concerning. I realize it's no one's fault here, but.
Yeah, we discussed today, they took full ownership of that number, apologized, and said they will get to the bottom of it and we'll figure out what the run rate is. They need to audit SCE, which they will do. We're in the process of getting their contract finalized. Once that's finalized and approved by the city council, then we will go to SCE for an audit.
Okay, and what kind of a time frame is that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, the contract is currently being worked up in the procurement department with Avenue, so we're hoping to bring that to council either in this next meeting for March, maybe a little late for that, but hopefully in the first meeting in April.
Okay, I mean, I think it's important because as we're looking at, trying to be cautiously optimistic, to make sure, to understand that number that we relied on outside consultants for. I also wanted to ask, we have money in here, and I'm sorry I'm going to jump around a bit because we did. On the library, you have the you have the $30 million in general fund and the $14 million in capital. And how is that affected if we do the bond measure that was discussed?
I don't know if I understood the question. How's what affected?
You have the library?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't see that page.
Yeah, it's $14.12 million right now that we have budgeted. That was for that's for the infrastructure part of the library. So that's the grant money of about $7 million and then the Measure J match of about $7 million. And then council approved the larger scope and the design, and whatever that number comes in at, we'll add it to that budget, and that's what we'll go out and issue debt for, whatever that number is likely going to be.
Okay, so then that would change how it ends up showing in the books, but this is the total amount that we're spending.
That's correct.
Okay, but we could have that through funded
That's the total
differently.
cash amount we're spending. When we get the debt proceeds, of course, those will go to the construction project as well.
Okay, and in terms of revenue, the general fund, did we take into account the new cannabis taxes?
So not for this year. We didn't do the forecast. That change came a little bit late for us, but you're right, it's going to impact what we do. We are going to bring a budget adjustment later this year for next year's budget to adjust that revenue so we don't have a budget that's out of whack. But we did not take that into account this year for that number, so we'll see how that impact happens.
Okay.
If it's significant, we will bring a budget adjustment back to the council for this year.
Okay, thank you on that. And also, I know last year in the Measure J, I know we're not going through the Measure J detail here, we had put aside $750,000 for the amphitheater in the downtown park. Where would that fall under? Because Measure J expenses have gone over revenue this year, I think. Or
So-
just, is that?
That is in the expense line here. That project is currently being worked by Parks and Rec. I think it's in their ad hoc committee to figure out how to best spend that $750,000. But it is in the expense line.
Okay, can I ask maybe to the city manager, is that rather than just look at how we spend that $750,000, is to look at what would we want, what are the options for an amphitheater to understand, could we have something fantastic for $2 million that we should look for going down the line, or is $750,000 sufficient? I mean, I think we should, rather than just look at how we spend the $750,000, look at what the options are for an amphitheater upgrade in our downtown park, and then go back and see if the 750 is enough, or if we need to look at something down the line.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So when we come back, it's not just looking at what we can get for the 750, but maybe what are some other ideas we
Yes.
can do, and what might be some financial projections for those?
Exactly. And maybe 750 would be something great and answer everything we wanted, but we don't want to find out after the fact that 2.5 million would have been perfect and we didn't even consider that. Okay, thank you. Do you have something on that? Councilmember Holstage, or?
So didn't council give direction for that initial money? Sound system, a permanent sound system? Didn't we ask for something specific already?
Well, we asked in general how to make it a fully usable amphitheater, so that could be done on a regular basis, which would include sound
Yeah,
and audio, but it potentially has to raise the roof or enlarge the stage or raise the stage. So I think there's a lot of different options in there. Definitely a permanent sound and audio, so different organizations can use it more easily. But we should look at what the different options are, whether it's because it can go from different levels of what an amphitheater is.
I think we would need to give some more instruction or direction to Parks and Rec specifically on exploring an amphitheater, amphitheater installation, or seating. I think we just need to give them some more direction to come up with a number, what to explore.
Yeah, well, what I think we should do is look at what 750,000 can get us, and then look at different design options for an amphitheater. For if that is an A-level one, which I doubt it is, what would be it's probably, I don't know what the level is, but there's probably 2 or 3 more upgrades for that, and let's have something, look at that as well. So I agree that, we know what we want as the basic, but let's make sure that we're looking at what would be the, best, worst, and ideal case.
Okay.
Councilmember Holstage?
Thank you. I'm really interested in this project as well, and I think it's incredibly important to activate the amphitheater. And we see cities like the city of Cathedral City built a really great amphitheater that's really being well used. The city of Indio is doing one program by Golden Voice. It's under construction now. So I think that this is urgent, and I very much also would like to allocate the money that it'll take to get to the, the use that we want to use that amphitheater for. So is it at the commission, or it's with Parks and Rec staff? So the Parks and Rec Commission is considering the project?
I'm pretty sure that it's in the ad hoc committee.
Of the commission?
Of the commission, yes.
Why is that? What question are they being asked, and what work are they doing?
Let us get you an update on that, and with this additional direction of also assessing the bigger picture, that
Right.
we understand you want to do an appropriate upgrade, not just put in some speakers.
Right.
So let us get an assessment and give you an update and bring you back a staff report in the future.
Thank you. And various options. And just to be clear, we appreciate the work of the ad hoc committee. That's great. It's just that we may want to enlarge the scope of the project to include staff and other people.
Thank you. Yeah, it just seemed like a very narrow question to go to the commission as opposed to the overall, how do we best use this amphitheater? So thank you for flagging that.
Let me see. I think those were basically my questions. And just one more thing on the amphitheater is that I think when we see these numbers, sales and revenue and TOT, that one of the main reasons we pushed to have an economic development department was so that we as a city can learn at ways in which we can drive our revenue and not just rely on our great hotels and vacation rentals and other partners. Something like an amphitheater, we're not just looking at it as an amenity, but a potential economic driver for people who will come and shop and dine and stay in hotels. So, I think those are all my questions and comments. Anybody else have anything? Yeah, sure.
I just have another comment if I can. I spoke to staff earlier about this, but I'd love for us to think through how to better engage the community and the public in our budgeting. I know that this is a check-in and we created a 2-year budget. It's sad to see how few people are participating in this item tonight. We get a lot of drama about, pickleball projects or theater projects or statues, right? But like the real bread and butter work of our priorities for the city is done in the budget. And I think it's our job to make it more accessible for the public. And so however we can, for the future council, as you do this and engage in a new 2-year cycle, how do we really educate the public, ensure that the budget reflects priorities and the public's priorities and the council's priorities? How do we share information in a way that it's really accessible for the average person? And thank you for your attention to that and using language, which you've done, flag that the capital, category is too broad, and how do we really explain to the public what we're doing with their funding? Because the public's placed a lot of trust in us with sales taxes, and they've agreed to be taxed again and again, and we are really delivering results to them through all of the work we've done, especially with Measure J projects. But I would just love to see a more robust community engagement process for the budget in the future, and I think that's on all of us as elected officials. Thank you.
Councilmember Middleton, do you have a comment?
One quick comment. I want to thank staff for the work that has gone into this, and I want to thank my colleagues for working with staff to establish a 2-year budget. The first time we tried to do the 2-year budget, we came upon the second year at the start of COVID, which was definitely a game-changing year. I think this year we're going to get to truly see the advantages of what we've implemented with the 2-year budget, and again, my appreciation.
Thank you.
And if I could just close, again, I also thank you and I appreciate it. And I want to summarize some of the comments and then have come up, because we have a 2-year budget, but it's still a living, breathing, working document that we're already seeing, changes, and there's some questions, and we've asked for, updates before mid-year. And so that is the other reason for the public to be involved, is because, we can't just sit here and wait till 2 years and say, oh, we have this much extra, this much down. We've got to do it as we go along and reset sometimes priorities as we go. And also sometimes new priorities come up. So I agree very much, Councilmember Holstage, getting the public involved. I know I've had some comments, but I don't know how best to do it. It's obviously a dense document, and it's not easy for everybody to digest, but the more community input we can get, and the more better ways we can look to explain it, the better. So, but again, thank you, Chris, and the whole team that worked on it. It's really terrific. Thank you. Okay, is there, I guess we need a motion to
Receive and file, I believe.
receive and don't? Okay. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 3C, which is approval of a professional services agreement to undertake a comprehensive. Yes, we do need
It might be appropriate to take a vote on that last action, even if it receive and file.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
I second. Oh. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Councilmember Holstig,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart,
Yes?
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Middleton, Mayor Bernstein.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 3C, which is approval of a professional services agreement to undertake a comprehensive update to the College Park Specific Plan and associated environmental review. May we have a staff report, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm Chris Hadwin. I'm the city's planning director. This item seeks approval of a professional services contract with Terra Nova Planning and Research, Inc. in the amount of $246,890 to undertake a comprehensive update and renaming of the College Park Specific Plan, which was approved by the City Council in 2011. To help orient us, the area shaded here is the boundary of the specific plan, which takes in or incorporates the Desert Highlands and Gateway Estates community, Palm Springs Villas 2, as well as Mountain Gate. It's generally bound by the Whitewater Wash to the north, by Highway 111 to the west, by North Indian Canyon Drive to the east, and by San Rafael Drive to the south. You can see, which I can't point to, but there are a couple of parcels south of San Rafael Drive that are also included in the plan boundary. Notably, at the corner of San Rafael and Indian Canyon is the Tower Market site that is within the scope of this plan, just to orient us. The Miralon development is to the east, and the Racket Club West community is to the south. The site in the northeast corner of the site, which we've labeled there, is the former College of the Desert site, and that's sort of important in the context of what the 2011 plan was seeking to do and why we're seeking to do this comprehensive update now. Of course, when the plan was envisioned and was moving forward in 2011, the COD had a plan for an educational campus at that location, and so really the existing specific plan is really centered around that concept. And so all of the land uses and development standards and sort of goals and objectives, or many of them, I should say, in the current specific plan, really envisioned there being a college at that location and that the surrounding land uses would support and contribute to that educational campus. Of course, that site is no longer proceeding in that capacity. Under the current planning framework, it can only be an educational campus, so one of the main driving forces of us doing this update is to re-envision what uses should go to that site. Yes, sorry.
Apologies, we have breaking news.
Okay.
I have to recuse because the specific plan boundary, I live in the specific plan boundary lines, which I did not think about when I raised this.
I'm going to give you such kudos for raising it.
I'm so sad right now, actually. I'm really sad about this. But good reminder to all of us, right, that sometimes we do have to recuse on issues that are dear to us because we live near something, it's a business of ours, and it's difficult as council members to have to do that. But it is part of our ethics rules. So sorry about that. Can I ask a question? Go ahead.
So it's not generally applicable as it would, like we're allowed to approve, street improvements near our neighborhood, things like that, but within a specific plan. Just because I very much appreciate Councilmember Garner's leadership in her district, it's really hard to lose the district council member on such an important district issue.
Actually, I was just looking at an FPPC advice letter today dealing with the procurement of consultants for these types of entitlement processes, and that does trigger the conflicts. I'll certainly look at it more closely to see if any exceptions apply. I'm not aware of any at this point, though, so I think it'd be safer to recuse.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be back.
I agree and I understand, but as we start to get into the development of this project, we need to do everything that we can to have that district's representative at this dais as we have these discussions.
Thank you all.
This specific plan is what portion of your district? I mean, at least a third of your district. It's a very large percentage. So I agree with Councilmember Middleton if there's anything we can do to make this work so we can have the district voice heard.
And that would include making a formal appeal on the behalf of the entire Palm Springs City Council to the FPPC to grant an exemption.
Yeah.
We can look into that for sure.
Thank you all. And just for the public, this particular item is a very small part. It's a first step. So there's still a lot more to go.
But we all agree that it would be important for you to be at the table if you could in any way.
Okay, so I think where I left off was essentially that we have, the College of the Desert, excuse me, site that had been envisioned in that location. They're now, of course, moving forward with an alternate location over here at Farrell and Tockwitz Canyon Drive. And so we really need to do a comprehensive update to this plan to account for that change, but I think also to recognize that the land use framework that was established in 2011 probably at this point isn't sort of reflective of the needs of the current community as well as future residents in that area. So the intent would be to undertake a comprehensive update to update that land use framework. Just to back up a little bit and give some background on what a specific plan achieves, it really, again, establishes a land use framework and vision for a small project area or at a neighborhood scale, regulating which land uses are allowed and what development standards will shape future growth. I've gone over that second bullet about the background on how the College Park specific plan was developed in 2011 and the changes that have occurred since. And that the COD is moving forward with an alternate site. So in terms of what we hope to achieve with the approval of this contract is, again, a comprehensive update to update that land use framework and sort of bring it into current time and reflecting the current needs of that specific community and those neighborhoods. I think it's important, and I think that this has come up in previous conversations, that in order to do that and to inform that process, that an economic and land use analysis be undertaken, and the consultant has included that in the proposal that is before you tonight. That will certainly do an analysis of what the needs for that community are, and how the existing framework, either does or does not support those uses, and how we can sort of remove barriers and attract the right mix of housing, jobs, and services to serve that community now and into the future. In addition, Terra Nova has proposed partnering with KDI Group, who are currently the consultants undertaking the city's Parks and Rec Master Plan, to ensure that we do a very robust outreach and engagement strategy as part of this update. And so one of the things that will be undertaken to inform this entire process is creating an advisory committee of local community leaders who will advise the process and will also help us sort of create a more bespoke outreach strategy, how we need to engage with that community and really make sure that they're involved in the process and establishing the vision for this area. There'll also be several workshops, surveys, mobile engagements, lots of different ways to get out there and engage the community on setting the priorities and the framework that will advance over the course of the next year. I mentioned the College Park is probably not the right name for this specific plan at this point in time, so just stressing once again that as part of that outreach and as part of this update, we will be coming up with alternate names that will be presented to you as this moves forward. I mentioned the total cost is just over $246,000. The funds are available and will be allocated from the city's Special Project Fund 160 through fiscal year 25. It's anticipated to take 12 months and will be completed around mid-2025. We're estimating 10 to 12 months to come up with the draft framework with all of the outreach and engagement we've talked about and the environmental work that would have to go in behind it before we get to public hearings of both the Planning Commission and the City Council for adoption. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions or comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem Hart.
Yeah, Chris, on the advisory committee, and I appreciate that that is being highlighted here, who would be the liaison from City Hall to that advisory committee?
It would likely be me at this point in time unless there's alternate direction, but we would certainly be looking to coordinate with you all, and if we can sort out a solution with the local council member, ideally their input as well, to help establish who's on that committee.
So I would encourage council to support very specific plan in place for what that advisory committee is being asked to do. So let's spell out what the goals are. What are the expectations of that committee or that advisory group coming on, and what are those expected outcomes that we're asking them to be involved in, so they know what they're getting engaged in, and they're working toward toward an end that they understand what their role is going to be. I think it would be much more meaningful for the community if we have these measures defined for them. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that that's important, and one of the first steps, should this contract be approved, will be to sit down and hash some of those details out with the consultant and, of course, those who are serving on the committee.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that, and I have the same concerns, and I think I had asked for this, and it sort of has fallen off the list. But I've been really focused on the diversity, equity, inclusion of city task force and commissions and work groups. And so the city, for example, not this current city manager, but we had set a vacation rental work group that had 9 out of 10 men, I believe. And so just wasn't representative of the community at all. And so that continues to happen even on our commissions. You know, we sat there, the Human Rights Commission did awards, and there were men in every single one of these seats for the Human Rights Commission as well. So I agree. There's 1 woman and 1 student rep. Who were present at that meeting.
Oh, okay.
So, but still, it's a dais full of folks that don't fully represent the diversity of our community. And so, and then I believe that there have been some internal work groups that I've also noticed just, fall short on representation and diversity and inclusion. So yes, I agree. I think remember back to the California Voting Rights Act working group that Councilmember Garner was a part of, and they had made recommendations, and prior councils had considered that. But it would be very nice to set some sort of policy just so that the city isn't making policy based on recommendations from groups that are not representative. And that it means in all ways, right? We've done this and really improved our diversity when we were hiring for commissions, looking at district, looking at, gender identity, looking at so many different factors. So I don't know what that looks like, but yeah, I think this is incredibly important here, especially it includes a historically Black community, and we really need those leaders' voices to be represented and included and, strong on this committee. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah, and I concur. And just to go to the commissions, we had 60 commission appointments last year, and which is still not, just a portion, but there was a concerted effort to make sure it reflects the community in all of the commissions, and that is something we have to continue to do. So, Chris, can I ask you, and I know you did this, but just to describe again for like the layman, for the public, for people who aren't planners, like what does like a site-specific plan do, and what is the outcome, and after the 12 months, what happens then?
Sure, yeah, no, and I kind of rushed through that. I'll just put this slide back up so people can see it. But really, at its core level, a specific plan is implementing the goals and objectives of the general plan, right? So we're in the middle of that process right now, and we're updating sort of the high-level policies that we'll have in the city that are guiding, our growth into the future. A specific plan kind of gets a little bit more into detail, and it can achieve a few different things. So earlier tonight, we talked about the downtown specific plan and Block B, and so it can look at implementing sort of a more specific project like that, or in a case like this, it can be sort of a neighborhood scale plan that is really looking to create a bespoke set of zoning rules or a land use framework or a vision for the future that is really responding to the needs of that specific part of a city. So it will, the current plan, and I imagine the future plan, once we go through the process, will establish what land uses are appropriate. It may result in changes to the zoning, or I'm sure it will result in changes to the zoning for a large portion of this area. It will set development standards that may be different from what you see elsewhere in the city, again, to respond to local conditions or needs. We can set, and the current plan does contain urban design guidelines, for example, for development within this area, so we'll be looking to update those. There's a circulation element to it, so we're looking at, how do we promote access to transit, cycling, pedestrian access. So it really is kind of a fusion of the general plan and the zoning code on a more local level.
And I guess to just simply dumb it down from someone like me, it's basically just a vision of what this area will be in the future. And that's really what we did. I wasn't here for the Block B, but for the whole downtown, there was a point where previous city council and the community said, this is what we want to see the area look like, act like, interact with the city, with the residents like in the future. And that's what led to the downtown park and the retail and hotel and plazas and other new roads being put in. So I think that's sort of, that this area we're sort of is really creating a vision for whatever the College Park is called in the future. What is this area of our city gonna be like in a certain amount of time? And I also just wanted to make another comment is that, you know, this is regarding a specific area, but when we develop these, it's relation to the whole city. So whatever kind of, how this operates is really relates and interacts with the whole rest of the city. And certainly whether it's an economic driver or housing or amenities, that it is not just this neighborhood, but it's how this part of our city is developed. So I did want to ask, is there potential over time to adjust what the boundaries are, or is that set?
I think we could certainly, we didn't look at it for this scope simply because, you know, the cost can certainly balloon and it becomes a large process to look at a larger area. This is already a relatively large specific plan area, but I think certainly over time we can look at other areas, bring them in, or even do other specific plans. We have, I think, somewhere in the ballpark of 6 to 8 in the city now, so we can either look at other specific plans for the area or potentially look at adjusting the boundary over time.
Okay,
certainly.
yeah, because some of the ones like the San Rafael, I mean, it's obviously there's a major thoroughfare there, but the community on both sides in the areas you pointed out is really integrated, and we might want to say that gets and adjusted down the line. But I think this is an exciting part of, you know, something are long overdue, and hopefully Councilmember Garner can participate because she really is the one that championed this. And but this is not just something, again, for this area. This will be a benefit to the entire city once this is done. Councilmember Middleton?
Thank you, and thank you to all of my colleagues for their comments. Chris, thank you for your work. As we move forward, I think it's also very important that we engage with the development community and with the investment community. As we develop our plans, we need to be certain we're developing plans that folks are willing to make the investments in, so that we do not come up with plans that look great, but don't have a chance of getting the financial support that it would take to build them. And then we even further disappoint a community that's been waiting too long to see this area developed.
And then just one last comment is, to the extent, will our Economic Development Department be involved in this process?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I think it'd be critical for our development team to be a part of it, working closely with the planning director, and there's a lot of considerations on that, residential, mixed-use development, all kinds of other opportunities, so we'll be involved.
And I
We've
think
already, I was just going to say, we've already had early conversations with the Economic Development Director.
Great, because I know, definitely with residential, but certainly with commercial, this is something that I believe is very important for this area, and I know residents have been asking for it for a long time. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, a motion?
I move to accept the staff recommendation with the caveat that we have goals, expectations, and outcomes clearly defined for members of the advisory group, and that those members are representative of the community that the project will serve.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart,
Yes.
Councilmember Holstage, Councilmember Middleton, Mayor Bernstein.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you, Chris. The next item on the agenda is item 3D, which is to adopt a resolution approving maximum rates that the tow service providers can charge and an associated vehicle towing administrative cost recovery fee for the Palm Springs Police Department. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. My name is Melissa Kane. I'm a police captain. This item is proposing the adoption of a resolution that approves the maximum tow and storage rates that our official police tow service providers can charge and an associated administrative cost recovery fee related to that program. The police department relies heavily on around-the-clock responses from official police tow service providers. That allows us to clear roadways of damaged vehicles and debris following traffic collisions, remove abandoned vehicles, recover stolen vehicles, and tow vehicles that are held as part of criminal investigations. Tow operators play a substantial role in the department's ability to restore the smooth flow of traffic following a traffic collision. Over the last 3 calendar years, the Palm Springs Police Department Dispatch Center has initiated an average of just over 1,600 requests for towing services annually. With an average of nearly 1,000 collisions reported each year, the majority of our tow requests are related to traffic collisions. Tow operators are also tasked with removing vehicles from special event venues such as Village Fest and parade routes. In 2018, the city awarded our current police tow service contract to 3 local companies. And effective last month, one of those tow service providers resigned, and it leaves the department with just 2 official police tow companies. The resolution presented to you tonight involves 2 different types of fees. The first of those is the vehicle towing administrative cost recovery fee, whereby the city is able to recoup direct and indirect costs associated with the administration of the rotational tow program. Staff has conducted a comprehensive review of our historic labor and material costs that are associated with administering our rotational tow program, and we've determined that these rates are equivalent to $235 per tow. This is consistent with the administrative costs that were adopted by City Council in 2020. And per the municipal code, these administrative costs are subject to a CPI increase, which this year would be 4.7%. Applying that adjustment would increase that administrative fee from $235 per vehicle to $246 per vehicle. While it is subject to the CPI, staff is recommending that council defer that cost because the proposed $235 fee is reflective of the city's actual and reasonable costs per vehicle. The second set of fees that are addressed in the resolution are those that are related to the tow fee schedule. These are the fees that the official tow service providers are authorized to charge for their towing and storage services for department-initiated tows. The current maximum tow and storage fees were originally adopted in July of 2018 and have not been updated since that time. Staff is proposing an increase to the existing maximum towing and storage rates. We've obtained comparable fees from other local municipal law enforcement agencies administering rotational tow programs under the same or similar circumstances as the department. The proposed increased tow and storage rates are at or near the rate for other local police tow services, rounded for ease of calculation. The maximum towing rates have historically been calculated at a flat rate fee, meaning that a tow, no matter how long it took from start to finish, would be charged at a flat fee not to exceed the established hourly rate. Most of the tows that we conduct here in the city of Palm Springs take an hour or less, but there are certain circumstances where they exceed an hour. Those can include collisions that involve extensive cleanup, overturned vehicles, off-road recovery, or things where they have to respond out of town for us. While these aren't common, these types of responses from our tow service providers often require a significant investment of their personnel, equipment, and their time. Staff is proposing the adoption of an hourly rate, which is industry standard and currently authorized for tow service providers used by all other Coachella Valley law enforcement agencies and the California Highway Patrol. For tows exceeding 1 hour, it would be proposed that those rates be charged in 15 increments, meaning that for every quarter of an hour, they'd be able to charge a quarter of an hour, a quarter of the approved maximum tow rate. Towing time would be calculated beginning when the operator arrives on the scene and concludes when they drop the vehicle either at their tow yard or whatever location the department would designate. We are equipped to conduct audits to ensure that the hourly rates are being charged in accordance with the proposed amendment. There's also several fees that are not currently included in the fee schedule, and staff recommends that those be included. Those would incorporate after-hours gate fee and a flat rate for a secondary tow of the same vehicle.
Okay, thank you, Captain. Before I know there was a question from one of the tow companies that came in that you answered. It was a regarding why trucks and trailers 20 feet or less are less than passenger cars.
Yes, one of our current tow service providers posed the question about the proposed rate for trucks or trailers of 20 feet or less. He recommended that be increased from the proposed $85 to $90, which would be the same as passenger cars. And he did pose, I think that's he posed a reasonable explanation for that, whereas a standard pickup truck would be the same as a passenger vehicle.
Okay, so that's something that you would make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. What? I'm sorry, Councilman Garner? Okay, I have another question. Do you know how many, the over an hour, that is really you said for out of town? I mean, that just means out of downtown, or?
No, there are occasions, for example, when we're conducting an investigation that's out of the area, or we pursue a vehicle that's out of the area, and then it needs to be recovered and returned back to the city.
I see. Okay, all right. And on another do you have any idea how many cars get towed during Village Fest every week?
We estimate approximately 4 to 6 per week at Village Fest.
Okay. I'm going to ask that we have the city look at some other ways in which we can help prevent that, and whether it's, I know there's signs there, not everybody reads signs. I know some of our restaurants are very good at letting their patrons know, but it's very concerning to our downtown to have 4 to 6 cars a week get towed when they're out there patronizing our businesses, for the most part. I mean, I shouldn't say I don't know for sure, but I know I've heard from several businesses that their customers are quite upset. So I don't know, I'm going to ask the question to the city manager if we can at least look into that, what we could do.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and to the council members, I know the police department staff are continuing to look at that. In fact, I think just last year, they made some significant changes to how they tow vehicles to a nearby lot, as opposed to at some location far away, which makes it much more onerous for the person to retrieve their vehicle. So they've already taken some steps to make that much simpler for that person to get it. Of course, you can't always, resolve every situation. People are coming out of bars and everything. No, none of us are trying to create a bad experience for our visitors. We want to have them have a good experience, and we'll continue to look at some things. I do want to compliment the police department through our legal settlement some time ago, or I think maybe it was the council recommendation that we meet, I think semi-annually, with all of the tow operators, and the police department's been very good at making sure I conduct those meetings with our tow operators at least twice a year. And through those discussions, we've had good conversations about how we can simplify that process, make it easier for patrons who are downtown. But we will continue to look at that, Mr. Mayor, and there's potentially other actions we can take.
Okay, thank you. And this is not for the night. This is just between the 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock hour, or 6 o'clock, when they're towing them. So they're not people who have necessarily been out for all night. But we did at one point, we have the signs when we do parades and things, we put the paper signs. Yeah. I don't know whether we want to potentially look at that or something. Unfortunately, people don't, if they're used to parking downtown, they're not used to checking the Thursday night. Or if they're new to town, they're not usually expecting that would happen. So this is not a police act, it's more of a economic action. So are there any questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, thank you. So, Captain, I think you answered a lot of my questions previously, so I appreciate that. If there's 4, 5, or 6 towed on an average from Village Fest, how many of those actually get towed away from the temporary lot to the towing company's compound?
Very few. And to answer the mayor's question originally, the ideal number, I think, for even our tow operators, for everybody, the ideal number of vehicles to tow from Village Fest would be 0. It's something that we've been working diligently with our entire SEP team to try and reduce the overall numbers. We have made a couple of changes in the last couple of years here, and they have reduced the numbers. Our tow operators generally give people a minimum of 2 hours to retrieve their vehicles. We've changed the location where their vehicles are towed to, so it gives them it's more visible and certainly easier for them to get to if their vehicle is towed from the venue. And then one of the other things that from a historic perspective, the city has not passed along that administrative cost recovery fee to anybody that has their vehicle towed from Village Fest or any other city-sanctioned special events. That helps reduce, I mean, it's significant, but it does, I think it plays a good role in community relations with them.
Yeah, and I think no one wants to tow from Village Fest or any of our events. And I think it's great that we're only looking at 4 or 5. And I think it's fantastic that the city is not charging the city's recovery fee on those cars. That's a $235 that could be passed on to these poor, unsuspecting people in most cases. So I appreciate the fact that the city doesn't pass that cost on. And I applaud PD because, I know the department has been trying to help raise awareness, and to the point where even in the early hours as the streets closed, a patrol car is going up and down the street saying on the bullhorn to the folks that are in the businesses that the cars are going to be towed in 30 minutes. Your cars are going to be towed in 30 minutes. So I think that helps a lot, and maybe our effort is can be focused on educating our merchants downtown and reminding them so they can make sure that their patrons know that there is a tow happening after a certain period of time and to beware. So I think that educational outreach may be more effective for us than even looking at delineators, which would cause a tremendous impact on Village Fest, setting them out with signs on them. So I would be in favor of having some type of an educational program that can help our merchants downtown help their customers. And thanks to PD for the work on trying to mitigate the number that are towed. And I understand we want to make an adjustment to this schedule that trucks and trailers 20 feet or less are going to be equal to passenger cars? Is that what I'm
Yes, sir,
hearing?
increase
Yes.
from 85 to 90.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, so we have a motion to approve with the change of the trucks and trailers 20 foot or less from 85 to 90. Is that,
So moved.
okay, seconded? Okay, Councilmember Garner seconded. The roll call?
Councilmember Gardner, second.
Yeah, who's first?
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart.
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Holstich. Councilmember Middleton. Mayor Bernstein.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you, Captain, for the report. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, the next item is public comment on non-agenda items. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the city council on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Although the city council values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. Our first speaker is Abraham Ishak, followed by Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero.
I stand before you once more to address a matter of grave concern, the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Despite the mayor's characterization of the resolution as humanitarian, I question whether the inactions, or rather shameful inactions, of this council truly align with humanitarian values. Let us confront the stark reality. In the confines of what can only be described as a concentration camp, essential food aid is being deliberately withheld from reaching a large population in Gaza. Children, innocent and vulnerable, are at risk of dying or have already died from starvation. Yet, in the face of this humanitarian crisis, our council remains eerily silent. Is this not a humanitarian crisis deserving our utmost attention and immediate action? Would it not be considered humanitarian for the council to release a resolution urgently urging Israel to allow food aid trucks access into Gaza? Would it not be humanitarian to demand that Israel refrain from violence against civilians seeking food aid? It seems absurd to even ask these questions. Yet, since October 7th, this council has continued to offer its unwavering support to Israel. How can we justify such support in the face of such blatant disregard for human life? If we are willing to turn a blind eye to the suffering of innocent children, then what does that say about us? Are we truly representatives of the people? Are we complicit in their suffering? I implore each member of this council to reflect on their values and their responsibilities as leaders and role models within our community. It is not enough to simply offer lip service to humanitarian ideals. We must take meaningful action to uphold them. We know that the emergency resolution was to show solidarity, but the words that were written were too strong. What is truly the motive that is keeping you from releasing another resolution in solidarity with the children of Gaza?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. This is the 6th time that I and others have come here to speak and reflect on the resolution that you passed on October 12th and urge you to either reconsider the words of the resolution or pass another that calls for a ceasefire. Additionally, I and others continue to be concerned that this City Council, a local government body, is passing resolutions on international issues. At the last council meeting, I brought copies of the San Jose City Council policy banning actions on issues that do not directly impact and affect the operations of the city. I again urge this council to consider passing a similar policy, a bylaw, or a resolution that disallows the council from making comment on issues that are far beyond their reach. I repeat my call. Let a local council that is funded with local taxes and made up of local community members voted into office through local elections be concerned with local matters, not international ones. I want to extend my appreciation to 4 of you who have spent time discussing this issue with me since January. None of you are my council member, as I live in District 4. None of you were obligated to meet with me and hear my thoughts or other community members' thoughts on actions taken by this council. However, all of you did meet with me, and that should be recognized. With that being said, it boggles my mind that the council member who represents me and my district still ignores my requests, and now to schedule a time to meet with me. Since the last council meeting, I have received messages and comments and have had meetings with other District 4 residents, and have found that that is simply part and parcel of my council members' modus operandi. There is a history of ignoring calls, pleas for meetings, and simply shrugging away the worries of District 4 residents. If that is the way they treat constituents now, voters should know about that so they can be completely informed for whom they may be considering for higher office.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
No further commenters.
Okay, the next item, City Council and City Manager request for upcoming agenda development. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to make just one quick comment I didn't get in when the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about Village Fest, and we will definitely, I'll reach out to our business liaison officer, Dean Grubel. I think that could be a good partnership with our police department to reach out to our merchants and coordinate that education. I think that's could work really well. Second thing I wanted to do is just follow up on a couple very briefly on the mayor's comments about our navigation center. Council members will remember that a week ago Monday, when the center opened for the first time, we had 26 individuals take advantage of our services. Jay Verrata just shared with me that we had 43 individuals take advantage of the services tonight. So that number has slowly been growing each day, and congrats to our PD and our social service providers who are getting out there, helping people take advantage of it. So I think it's doing exactly what we, hope to do. So we will keep moving in that direction. And with that, I do want to very publicly, and I've said this in some meetings, but I want to publicly really thank our 3 key people that have really worked on this Navigation Center project. That includes our Deputy City Manager, Flynn Fagg, Jay Verrata, Housing and Community Development Director, and Joelle Montalvo, who's been overseeing the construction part of it. And all three of those folks have just really done really important work trying to get us to that point. So thanks to all of them. With that, just looking at the tentative upcoming meeting schedule, we'll probably have a bit of a longer meeting at the next meeting. You'll see that we will have a presentation by the Economic Development JPA. That's Scott White and their group. And I know Mayor Bernstein has been a part of some of the meetings, and they'll be coming to make a presentation to us about their economic development work. We're going to be bringing forward the Convention Center Master Plan. You'll recall that a month or 2 ago, they came forward with the Convention Center Futures Study, and this will be some of the master planning work that they've done for us looking to the future. We'll have our second hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. We have a TOT incentive agreement with Caliente Tropics, and we will be bringing back, you asked us to make sure we come back with the automated license plate reader cameras for private entities. I think the police department is ready to come back with that report. So that's what will be going on in 2 weeks in addition to other items. We'll have another incentive agreement on April 11th. Trying to look out a little farther out on the 25th. We have a historic designation that will be coming forward. Our foodware ordinance update that you've asked us about. In May, we'll have our airport master plan, some of our airside alternatives, and you'll see below some updates at the very bottom to our Palm Springs disposal delinquent waste disposal charges, and a DDA, disposition development agreement with Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services, which is the Desert Highlands vacant lots that we're working about trying to get out the door for home ownership opportunities for folks. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I just have one question on I know we have the historic designation of the Ocotillo Lodge. It's my understanding there's a backlog of historic designations that is waiting to come forward. Is that correct?
I missed that. Say that again.
My understanding is there's a backlog of historic designations that are waiting to come forward.
I haven't gotten the latest information. I know there's 3 or 4 that are in the queue that they're working on, but I will check on that and see where those stand and see if some of those are nearing advancement. We don't have everything on here that could be coming forward in the next 2 months,
Okay.
and so some additional things might be added. These are items that the directors have definitely come forward and wanted to make sure that I put on the list.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Middleton?
Thank you. There's an additional item that I would like to ask that council have an opportunity to discuss and review. We opened this week the Navigation Center with the early. I believe we should, at the time that we open the modular units, have a anti-camping, no camping ordinance in place in the city, prohibiting individuals from camping on public property. One that would be reasonably consistent with the City of San Diego's anti-camping ordinance, one that would be brought forth by staff after consultation with the police department, and the business community, and our residents. But I'd like to have something in place for us to consider well before those modular units are open for occupancy.
So you're requesting council agreement, this is an agenda item to
Yes.
discuss this. Do we-
Thank you. We already have an anti-camping ordinance on the books in the city of Palm Springs. It already is being enforced by PD. We've talked about implementing, and thank you for raising that, and I followed what San Diego's done. We have considered sort of no camping zones that the city council has considered, and so maybe the question is to staff, what would be the amendment that, is the existing ordinance sufficient? Would there be an amendment to that? Would it be a specific location around that area? Do we need to specify public land? I know that's very dicey considering state law and court case law from the Supreme Court. So those would be my questions before knowing how, but perhaps bringing forward an analysis of the current ordinance, though there is some legal liability in that, perhaps.
And perhaps what I could do is provide the council with an update in terms of what we do have on the books, what we have in terms of administrative regulations, and then the council can decide whether it wants to have that conversation.
Certainly, and I'm very open to all of that, but no one should be under any misconceptions. I don't think what we have today is adequate, and it is my hope that we will come up with stronger measures.
Well, I think and just to add on to that, we have told the public that one of the reasons for having the navigation center and the modular units is to reduce the camping and encampments that we have. So it's probably important to say, okay, we've had this on the books. We were not able to enforce it because we didn't have beds. Now we do. But let's just make sure that it is accurate. So I would do the analysis. If it is something that is satisfactory to enforce no camping, then that's great. If there needs to be decisions or changes or adjustments, then it should come before council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm very familiar with this ordinance because I had analyzed it as a human rights commissioner in 2016 or 17. So we may want to update our anti-camping ordinance to comply with law. Currently, our anti-camping ordinance prohibits possession of camping paraphernalia is the language. And so, yeah, it would be great to get an analysis from the legal department. The law has changed significantly in this area for the last decades that this law was written. And then also from PD, I know I've been at numerous neighborhood meetings on Saturday mornings over the last few weekends with the police chief and with our South Palm Springs leaders from PD who've talked about now they are able to enforce encampments, and that's why for residents of Palm Springs who've seen more visible homelessness, that is because there's been significant movement from encampments in the wash, especially in my district in District 4. So thank you to PD. So I don't further actions on that and making sure people are living in humane living conditions and not outside. So agree that an assessment might be timely. I'm happy to support that. But yeah, I'd like more information before we bring back a change to the ordinance.
Okay. I mean, do the assessment. I think we should agree, if we know that there are changes that need to be made, it should come back. So we know that there's one minor thing, but if there's more than that, it should come back for discussion.
My request was to get this on our agenda so that we can have the discussion, and I suspect it'll be a lively one.
Yeah. Okay, and any other, you did.
Scott, back on the top of that schedule, we're allocating 30 minutes for the CDBG second hearing. Why do we think it's going to take so long for the second hearing?
You know, Mayor Pro Tem, we kind of try to throw some time there, and I don't know if it's really completely accurate or not, but I wouldn't put a lot of stock in.
All right.
We try to make a rough guess, but
Okay.
there's nothing that we feel bound by.
Yeah. Okay.
So we don't add more agenda items.
No, I've got one to add. So.
I know, but that's why they do it.
That is
That's why
not
I needed to
correct.
check on the timing. So a couple items that I'd like to bring forward to council, and I think the most important one that the conversation has been around for a while, and that's the safety of our palm fronds on the trees downtown. You know, we had another incident that occurred, and this time with a baby and a mother, and I think this is the time that we need to bring the trimming of the palm trees back to council so we can update the 2009 ordinance that's in place. So I would ask that we have support from council that we bring that back in a very timely effort. And since we have time in the next meeting, maybe we can start with the March 28 meeting.
Do we have, anybody else want to see that? I think we should bring it back for discussion. I'm not going to dictate when. I think that's up to the city manager, if that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Do you have a comment?
If there's
City
interest
Attorney?
similar to the other issue, we can bring back probably informational report to the council and see what the council wants to do.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Anything else, Mayor Pro Tem?
Second item is that, we got news of some youth bullying that's occurring at Raymond Cree. And I'd like to ask the council's support that we task the Human Rights Commission with the work of partnering with the police department, Raymond Cree, and the school officer and the school district, and look at the issues of bullying in school and what levels of awareness can we raise, and what community dialogue may be helpful to the school and to the students, so we can help curb the bullying that's happening. And it just is a formality. This is why I asked the mayor if I could bring it forward, just so we could, council could agree that we want to task the Human Rights Commission with that work.
So yeah, just to clarify, I did attend the Human Rights Commission meeting this past week, and previously they had an executive committee that would set the agenda, which is part of their ordinance, and they have removed that now. So as part of their agenda, each one, they do agenda development in the regular commission meeting. So at Mayor Pro Tem's suggestion, which is a great one, I also forwarded this to our staff liaison, Jay Verada, and the chair of the commission to bring it to the commission. I'm not sure if they need to discuss putting it on a future agenda, but to make sure that or if they can put it on the next one, but one of those two. So we agree. Councilmember Gardner.
So we have a group. There's members of the community, the vice principal of Raymond Cree Middle School, myself, rotating folks that come in, Coachella Valley Housing Authority, Desert Healthcare District, We Are One United. I don't know if I'm missing anybody, but we meet monthly to discuss youth violence and to figure out tangible approaches to reducing youth violence. So it might be good to discuss.
Is there an option to potentially include someone from the Human Rights Commission?
Yeah,
to
definitely.
Support? So that might be the best way, so
Definitely.
they're not duplicating efforts, but
Yeah.
they're actually adding their support.
Yep, and as I said, we have the vice principal
Yeah.
already and part of that group. So yeah, happy to include anybody that is any groups that want to participate, and if the school district wants to send additional representatives as well, other than not just, but instead of only Jody Diaz, then that's fine as well. But didn't want to throw that out there. I was going to mention that in my council comments, so this is kind of a good segue.
That's terrific. So, City Manager, if you can mention this to Jay Verada for the Human Rights Commission, that this does exist and that this group exists, and potentially there's a role for the Human Rights Commission or a representative to play in that. Thank you.
And one last item is just if we could make a recommendation for sustainability, City Manager, if they could review the EV charging station placement plan, the rollout, and just to make sure that we've got the Palm Springs Air Museum on that plan at some point in time. They've expressed that they don't have any charging stations on their side of the street, and it's not their property, so there's some challenges. So I just want to make sure LP's got it on her plan. Thank you.
Yeah, to that end, they just said there was a report today about California climate. Our climate goals are not being met, and basically the main issue in Palm Springs is emissions, and so the EV project is key. Councilmember Garner?
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't turn off my mic. My apologies.
Any other council member comments? Councilmember Holstage?
Thank you. Just a very quick update, and it's a small drop in the bucket compared to what we're going to need, but another $5 million was committed through the federal government for the Coachella Valley Rail Project this week, thanks to Representative Calvert, who designated this as one of his primary projects.
That's terrific. Councilmember Holstage?
Thank you. I just wanted to lend my thank you to staff and all of your work on the Navigation Center. I know my colleague did that as well, but very exciting to celebrate opening 50 beds in the city of Palm Springs with 80 more units coming online. I know staff worked incredibly hard, a huge array of staff. I know it was all hands on deck to develop this project. I know our new city manager, no longer that new, but you've been here about a year, and we tasked you with completing this project that you took on. I know Teresa Gallivan, our assistant city manager, and Flynn, and so many more of you worked on this with very, very dedicated, and I know it took a lot of time because it's sort of outside of the scope of your normal jobs, developing a navigation center. But very impressive work. It was incredible to be there and see people walking in who, are experiencing homelessness, and see, PD transporting so many people there, seeing Martha's and the services offered. So very hopeful for the future of our city and homelessness in our city. And I just wanted to say really well done to city staff, and thank you for taking that on and completing it. And I know our work is not done for the public. It sounds like we will open the modular units this summer, and then we will do a grand opening for the modular units and invite the public. But there were 100+ people there from the public, so you can see how much interest there is in solving homelessness in the city of Palm Springs, and that's sort of month over month on wins for the city, because we also opened a Monarch project this past month, and the folks who opened that said that mothers with kids who are living in their cars waiting for the site to open came in directly from their cars into that housing project. So it's great to see us making a dent. I know it's taken a few years to really get this project done, but just wanted to applaud the residents in particular for all of their support of this project, who give us the political will and cover to be able to push these projects forward. So thank you to the council for your leadership. It's not easy, and thank you to staff for making it happen.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. The next regular city council meeting will be held Thursday, March 28th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. and we are adjourned at 7:48 p.m.